Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am greeting you in a way that you are watching this video today. So today I want to talk about losing your grip. The reason I want to talk about that is because a lot of the times, like, we are in positions where when we're on our journey, we feel like we're losing our grip, we're losing our ground. We feel like there's a disconnect. We feel like there's an absence. We feel so many different things, and I want to talk about both perspectives in regards of like you actually losing your grip, or you thinking that you're losing your grip, because sometimes it can go both ways. You can actually really be losing your grip and you're falling short, and you're veering off, or it could be very much where you're thinking that you're losing your grip, but you're not really losing your grip. You just feel, that disconnect. You feel like, okay, I'm doing what God has called me to do. I'm remaining steadfast. I'm maintaining my fruits, but I feel like I haven't seen no, how should I put this? No manifestation, no your fruition coming to reality, coming into what you have been doing, like your diligence, your works and stuff like that. You haven't seen it come through, so it's like, okay, am I losing my grip? Like, where, like, what's up? So yes, I want to talk about that because I know what it feels like when you're just like, what's up? I'll put here, what do you do when you feel like you're losing your grip? You lean in more. That's what you do. When you feel like you're losing your grip, you should be leaning in more. You shouldn't be stepping and that goes back into walking by faith and not by sight. Because once again, when we perceive like we're losing our grip, it's coming from us seeing something that is not changing. It's coming from a place of, okay, it's coming from a place of measurement. Okay, I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't see anything coming through. Or, I've been walking steadfast. I've been going through, I've been, how should I put this, separating from things, but I'm still feeling the weight of a lot of things, like as if you're not being healed. So we're measuring it, and we don't see anything. We feel like there's no result. We feel like there's no change, and I just want to say, like, listen, that's the time when you lean in. You don't want to step back and be like, okay, I don't see anything or I don't feel anything, so let me just go in a different direction. I don't suggest that. I don't recommend that. Like, listen, whatever. And that goes back to one of my other videos in regards of like, whenever doing enough. Listen, whenever God has called you to do something and you're still in that area, you're still doing what you need to do, and you're doing what is required, just because you don't see any fruition doesn't mean that God has forgotten you, or he's no longer observing you, or no longer, with you. That's just, you need to remain there. That doesn't mean that you should be stepping in your own direction. Stay there. If God has left you there and gave you that direction, and you have arrived at that destination where he told you to, okay, I want you to do this, just remain there. Continue to do what you need to do. Continue to do your due diligence, but lean in when you feel like, okay, what's up? I feel like I'm losing my grip. Like, I don't feel a connection. I don't feel like, there's no inclination for like another step, so I just want to say, like, lean in, go into prayer, stuff like that. So yes, take as example Job. When his whole world was falling apart, he remained steadfast. So even though he couldn't understand what happened, he leaned in. He leaned in, even then, you can see, from a realistic perspective, he was questioning God, like, God, what is going on? Like, I need you to explain to me what is going on. And I want to say it is natural because we're human, especially when things are not, changing, they're not shifting, and you have been walking on the path that you've been walking on, and things is just like, it's still going to the left, but you over here on the right, and just, still doing what God has called you to do, but nothing has changed. Lean in. Take Job as an example. Lean in. So yes, I also put here, take As an example, Joseph, when he was falsely accused and placed in imprisonment, but still praised. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure when that happened, I'm sure he probably had so many questions in his mind. I'm sure he probably had so many, like, thoughts like, God, what happened? Like, am I like, am I doing something wrong? But clearly in that aspect, the enemy was coming up against him. That, like, clearly in that aspect. And then on top of that, God allowed it. Once again, God holds dominion over everything. So anything that we encounter, he allows it. So even then, Joseph showed true character there. Even though he was tempted, because the wife was coming up against him like, listen, yeah, we're going to be tempted. And when she seen that he was standing steadfast and said no, that's when the enemy turned it up a notch and said, you know what? I'm going to falsely accuse you then. As if you did it. And now you're going to get the penalty as if you did it. So not only was he tested his loyalty, but he tested his faith too, because even then he could have, like, so much could have happened there, but not. Joseph was like, okay, cool. I'm about to go into this prison, but I'm still about to praise my God. So even though you feel like things are going out of, like, whack or whatever case may be, doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing your grip. Sometimes it's a setup. Because then that's when everything started changing for him. That's when everything started changing for him. So sometimes it's a setup. But you must remain steadfast. You must lean in. You must still trust in God. You must still praise and say, you know what? I rebuke it. I refuse. Period. So yes. A lot of the times it can be many reasons why we feel like we're losing grip. Okay? So one, I put here, our willful disobedience. That can be one of the things why we feel like we're losing grip and we're losing that connection. If you're not following God's commandment, and what I mean by this is that if God has called you to do something, but you're not doing it and you're doing something else, you're going to feel that disconnect. Because God has called you to do something, and if you're not doing that, then it's going to be that disconnect. So yes, God is testing us. So sometimes things, even though he's next to you, sometimes it may go quiet. You may not hear nothing. And it could be very much a test. Whatever you're going through. But in that, you should still be praising. You still should be praying. Like, you still should be doing what he has called you to do. So yes. Or the enemy is tempting us. So sometimes when the enemy is tempting us, God is not saying nothing. He wants to see what we're going to do. Like Job. Job had so many questions. God didn't say anything. He finally did answer him. But during part of that, he didn't say anything. And that was also, it was a tempt and a test. Especially in regards to Job, God tested his faith. Even though he knew what Job was going to do, it was still a test. So yes. So I put here, take for example Saul. He defies God's commandment and the spirit left him. That's over there in 1 Samuel. So sometimes when we feel that disconnect is because when we don't follow God's commandment, when he tells us, instructs us to go do something and we don't do it, that's where the absence come at. That's where the silence coming at. So yes. So I put here, this led him into other deities to connect with the higher realm. If you go read it, this man led into many different things. Like, he went to what they called them back in the day. It was like I forgot the name that they called them. I forgot the name. I don't want to say the wrong name, but I want to say, like, they didn't call him a witch. It was like a different word. A seer. There we go. Thank you. A seer. So he went to go and he disguised himself so he wouldn't be recognized, but they automatically recognize. You cannot not recognize Saul. He was like a tall man. From an average human being, there was at his shoulder. So I don't even know why he even tried to do that. But anyway, they recognized him. He went to go see them and try to connect with Samuel and yeah, all of that. So that's another thing that you want to be careful with. Like when you feel like you're losing your grip and you feel like there's a disconnect, don't allow that absence, not even absence, that silence or that quietness to lead you into other paths. Because that's when you actually really do sin against God. Because that is something that God does not, he doesn't accept. Okay, so it's not recommended that you do, like, people that do reading cards, like tarot cards, or, all of that, like, connecting with the, that people that has passed away, like, it's not recommended. I don't, if in your time, God will speak to you when it's time. And in the meantime, in between time, you should be praying, period. And it may not be something that we like to like hear or wait and do, but that's the reality of it. So yes, I put here, it was through his disobedience he lost his grip. So now this is what he actually did. Not you thinking, but he actually did. Because that's when he started going into other paths. He was veering into other things because he was so desperate to get a communication from God and from, even from Samuel. So it was like he did lose his grip. It was no longer thinking, he did. And he knew it. And that's why he did what he did. So, yes, I put here, what is the difference between losing grip and feeling like you're losing your grip? It's your mind. So sometimes we feel like we lose our grip, and that's just our mind perceiving things. Like, okay, but if one thing that because I put here, just a reminder, if you're still walking in obedience, doing what God has called you, and maintaining your fruits, then it's not you losing your grip. It's you thinking that you're losing your grip. And be careful with that, because that's nothing but, the enemy can, utilize that and weaponize that against you to make you walk in a different path, to discourage you and say like, hey, I don't think I really got the spark anymore. So let me just go do this. Like, no. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're walking in obedience, if you're maintaining your fruits, if you're, making sure your spirit is right, making sure your heart posture is right, you're praying to God, you're praising him, you're reading your Bible, you're doing everything that you need to do, then you're not losing your grip. You're not losing your grip. I would honestly ask, because that kind of leads into like hopelessness. Like you're losing, like, faith, like your faith is wavering, your hope is starting to, get low. So yeah, I would actually lean into prayer and ask God to help you lean into them fruits and help you to step into them fruits, So yes. But like I said, just be careful, because like I said, the enemy can weaponize that against you, and you don't want that. Especially if you're doing everything that God has called you to do. So, yes. And I just put here, if you're no longer showing up like you used to and falling short, then you are losing your grip. So if you should know, like if you're not showing up the way that you used to, you should know if you're not doing what you're supposed to do when it comes to God, then you are losing your grip. And I'm going to say that you should repent, go into prayer, and ask, ask God for forgiveness and begin to stride and, walk on your path. So I hope this video was edifying. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and comment.